Hello. Why do pagans care so much about mead? The earliest evidence we have of mead in Europe, and mead, by the way, is a honey-based alcoholic beverage, one of the oldest mankind has ever produced. The earliest evidence of it in Europe comes from what archaeologists call the bell beaker culture. Now, recent evidence has shown that the bell beaker culture was heavily influenced by the Indo-Europeans. But it cannot be said that the bell beaker culture itself is Indo-European necessarily, because, as archaeologists say, pots aren't people. And we identify the bell beaker culture in an archaeological sense by the beakers, which give it its name. However, genetic tests on bell beaker culture people in Iberia show that they don't have any step admixture, whereas those from the lower Rhine area have a significant amount, very Indo-European, therefore. And as we've heard in some videos, such as Varg saying that whether there was an Indo-European invasion and whether these people replaced the genetic stock that existed before the invasion of Indo-European people is debatable, because it might have happened in different ways in different parts of Europe. In Britain, for example, we know now from a paper that came out only last week, or the preliminary reports from the paper, that in Britain, the population before the advent of the bell beaker culture in that area of Britain resembled that of Mediterranean regions of Europe, but that 90% of the British genetic profile, the DNA of the British Isles, was replaced from the beginning of the bell beaker culture onwards, and then began to resemble the same profile as that of the bell beaker culture from the lower Rhine area. So certainly in Britain we can see that the bell beaker people, who were, as I said, partly a combination of pre-existing European populations and the steppe culture, they were different, and they were drinking mead. And they were probably speaking Indo-European language, and all the Indo-European pagan religions we know, especially the ones in the north, whether we're talking about Baltic paganism, Celtic paganism, or Old Norse paganism, mead plays an important role in those religions. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Now, the oldest historical source that mentions mead is Hindu. It's the Rig Veda. Now, the Rig Veda is very important Indo-European literature. It really gives us some great insight into the Indo-European mindset. Here is a quote from the Rig Veda on the subject of mead. "I have tasted the sweet drink of life. All the gods and mortals seek it together, calling it madhu, honey mead. The glorious drops that I have drunk have set me free in wide space. The drop that we have drunk has entered into our hearts, and immortal inside mortals." Does this sound to you like someone who's on the piss? It is a mistake when neo-pagans and pagan people think of mead as the jolly, drunken kind of thing to facilitate drunkenness and everyone having a jolly good laugh. The meaning of mead, the esoteric meaning of it, is to do with a transcendent state of perception, the transcendent state being not your average alcoholic intoxication. There's another Indo-European text that's important to think about here, and that is from the Zoroastrians of Iran, who are also an Indo-European people. I'll read this now. "And the Holy Spirit took Zoroaster's hand and filled it with all-encompassing liquid knowledge and said, 'Drink it.' And Zoroaster drank it, and all-encompassing wisdom was blended within Zoroaster. And he was in the Holy Spirit's wisdom for 7 nights." We know that there's in Hinduism and in Zoroastrianism, they both have this kind of sacred substance, intoxicating substance called soma in Hinduism and khaoma by the Persians, and that these two words are cognate. Now, I'm not the first person to point out that the way that they're described in these religions resembles the description of the sacred honey mead of Norse mythology. Now, in the Norse myths, in the Eddas, they describe often sacred mead, and I don't think it's correct to think of this as just an alcoholic honey beverage. It's something else, something more than that. We know that etymologically they're connected as well, because as I said when I read from that Rig Veda thing, they referred to soma as madhu, which is related to the word in Old Norse mjord. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. In Old English, it's meadhu, from which we take modern English mead. It all has a common root. And the intoxication of Heoma itself, the Avesta, the Zoroastrian text, calls this intoxication mata, which has the same root as well. It originally means honey. Now, this is of course the principal ingredient in mead, which is made from fermenting honey. But honey itself has, as I've said in my video, the sacred goddess of the honeybee, the honey itself has a metaphysical significance which goes beyond the sweetness of this substance of honey. It relates, in my opinion, to the sun. All the cultures describe, and I take this from Maria Kvilhag's work, they all describe, the Hindus, the Zoroastrians, and the Norse describe their sacred drinks as golden and bright, and bringing illumination, wisdom, eloquence, and poetry. Now, it's no coincidence that Odin is the god of poetry, and whence comes poetry? In the Norse tradition, the mead of poetry comes from the blood of Kvasir, who is killed. The gods blend his blood with honey to create this special substance, divine substance that brings wisdom. Odin is the god of wisdom and poetry. So this is a metaphor for the attainment of higher wisdom, which comes from, you focus the intellect on blending and brewing divine knowledge. The act of alcoholic fermentation can be seen as a symbolic of the fermentation of divine knowledge in the mind that allows the spirit to transcend. This also has parallels in Hinduism as well, as I've talked about in the previous video. That Odin becomes this sort of god of this divine mead, the sacred mead, and the divine poetry it's associated with, which is you should consider it as like a kind of transcendent state of divine intoxication. I'm not endorsing substance abuse of any kind, neither alcoholism nor anything else, but it does seem quite un-alcohol-like, the way it's described. And that's why everyone says the same thing about Soma and Heoma. No one has ever really seriously speculated that these substances, and the way they describe the intoxication, the divine intoxication of illumination and enhanced wisdom, no one has ever seriously proposed that this was just alcohol, because alcohol doesn't do that. And but for some reason, Norse, when people describe the Norse, it's always taken for granted that they're just describing an alcoholic drink. A bit strange, really. Well, what is Heoma and Soma proposed to be? Lots of people have said different things. People have said that there could be harmaline, which is like related to LSDs from wheat. Fly agaric is also proposed. Fly agaric is a type of so-called magic mushroom, but it's the red one with the white spots. But I don't think that's true for the case of any of them. It grows in northern climates too. So some people have proposed that all these theories about Odin being related to the use of fly agaric, but actually all these theories kind of disregard the fact that fly agaric doesn't create these kind of effects on people. It creates a kind of nausea, a feeling of illness, vomiting, and then a kind of dizziness and drunkenness, like feeling like disorientation. Certainly not a kind of enhanced state of perception that's described. Normally, when people say magic mushrooms, they're not talking about fly agaric. They're talking about psilocybin mushrooms. Now, psilocybin mushrooms have many, many species, and they grow all around the world. Not only do they grow here in Northern Europe, there are loads of them in England, there's loads of them, they grow all over Scandinavia, a type called Psilocybin semicyanta, or liberty cap mushrooms, which I talked about in one of the first videos I made on this channel. But there are also tropical varieties which grow, like such as cubensis, which you can find in India or Central America. Now, we know the Aztecs used these kind of mushrooms in their rituals. And it's been proposed that, yeah, maybe the soma in Hindu religion also had some kind of psilocybin in it. And therefore, by extension, perhaps Heoma did too. But very few people propose that psilocybin mushrooms are used in the divine mead of Norse myth. I think that was possible because they grow everywhere in these areas. And they grow normally on the droppings of animals. Now, in one Vedic source, the soma is likened to the body of the divine cow. This is interesting because Psilocybin cubensis, the tropical variety of that mushroom, grows on the droppings of cows. The European variety, Psilocybin semicianta, they grow around the droppings of livestock animal. So, and also grazing wild animals like deer. So any agricultural society would be aware of these things. And if you think that mead comes from the Indo-Europeans and they spread across, they brought this process of fermenting mead, honey as an intoxicating substance, a ritual substance, which would have been drunk originally in a beaker, which would be passed around. By the time you get to the Germanic and Celtic cultures, you're talking about a horn of mead. And this is what's depicted in archaeological sources. You have a figure holding up a horn of mead to offer to warriors, perhaps in Valhalla or in some kind of transitionary journey from one state to the next. On the Gotland picture stones, for example, this figure of the mead-bearing maiden, if it is a maiden, she is depicted standing next to an eight-legged horse. And as we know from Norse sources, Odin rode an eight-legged horse. This substance, which was spread by the Indo-Europeans, who were horse-based people, they would have come into contact with these mushrooms at some point. And it seems very likely to me that over the thousands of years that they existed, thousands of years that mead existed, that it could be possible that the use of this magic mushrooms were incorporated into the mead ritual, and that it was actually a way of receiving divine vision. And it has been shown by scientists that people under the influence of psilocybin, the parts of the brain associated with divine experience, like when people pray, are activated by that substance. And all kinds of interesting phenomena are observed in people who are under the influence of these mushrooms. Before anyone watching this goes out and says that I'm endorsing druggy behavior or whatever, I want to just clarify that I'm not, and I don't think it is necessary to use any intoxicating substance in order to have these kind of experiences, the religious experiences. It can be achieved through ritual, through prayer, through meditation, through fasting, through chanting. All kinds of different cultures have developed different methods of achieving these mental states. Magic mushrooms are just one shortcut that some cultures have used. And I propose that the Norse Germanic cultures also used them for this function. But not always, and you didn't have to do it. It wouldn't have been compulsory even for you to do that now. And on the subject of these kind of substances, I would like to read a passage from Julius Evola's Ride the Tiger about drugs. Young people who have more or less perceived the emptiness and boredom of modern existence and are seeking an escape from it. The impulse can be contagious. Drug use extends to individuals who did not have this original impetus as a point of departure. And in such people, it can only be regarded as an avoidable bad habit. Once starting on drugs to fit in or be in vogue, they succumb to the seduction of the states caused by the drug, which often wrecks their already weak personality. With drugs, we have a situation similar to that of syncopated music. Both were often transpositions onto the profane and physical plane of means that were originally used to open one up to the suprasensible in initiation rites or similar experiences. Just as dances and modern syncopated music derive from ecstatic African dance, the various drugs used today and created in laboratories correspond to drugs that were often used for sacred ends in primitive populations according to ancient traditions. He also makes it clear, if you were to use one of these drugs, how it would be you using the drug and not you being used by the drug. Let me read the quote. The blocked existential situation of the great majority of our contemporaries considerably restricts the possible range of reactions to drugs. However, the personal equation and the specific zone on which drugs here, including alcohol, act, lead the individual towards alienation and a passive opening to states give him the illusion of a higher freedom, an intoxication, and an unfamiliar intensity of sensation, but that in reality have a character of dissolution that by no means takes him beyond. In order to expect a different result from these experiences, he would have to have at his command an exceptional degree of spiritual activity, and his attitude would be the opposite of those who seek and need drugs to escape from tensions, traumatic events, neuroses, and feelings of emptiness and absurdity. In other words, if you're looking to magic mushrooms or any other substance as an escape or from the problems that you face in this world, then you're wrong. You must find them through discipline. And if you have that discipline, then you may be able to transform the intoxication towards a higher purpose. This would have to be incorporated into a rite or ritual. I expect that even the Eucharist has this as at its root. Alcohol itself could be used to this kind of the end. I mean, even mead as an alcoholic beverage was certainly used in some kind of divine rituals, but it should not be seen as a drunken piss up having a jolly, because that's not going to lead you to a higher state of perception of being. If you want to reach this higher state that the Indo-Europeans wrote about, you have to do it the hard way. Thanks for watching.